So one of my buddies sent me the dealer that looked solid. He sent me a super comprehensive menu. Like this guy had anything you could possibly imagine. I think he also had different like blends of like pressed pills, things that actually I didn't recognize the names of. Honestly, I'd have to like pull up the menu to check it, but tons of different strains of weed, pretty much anything you could possibly imagine. And dude, it was cheap, man. Like
Really?
shit was
Damn,
really
I'm
cheap.
sure you're like already at the source, for
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Modern Day Hippie. We are your homies who've done nearly every drug under the sun. Over 600 psychedelic trips and nearly every kind of bender you can possibly imagine have armed us with a universe of knowledge. I'm Yuki, and with my co-host Reggie, we talk about how we do drugs in a responsible, safe, and fun way to improve our lives. Before we dive in, and so we don't get sued, a quick legal disclaimer.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Our goal is to educate and inform others about the realities of substance use in an engaging and entertaining format. We share these experiences so you can learn from them without trying them yourself. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to attempt to recreate anything found in this episode or in any of our other content. We are not confessing to any acts stated in this podcast. The content in this episode should not be treated as factual or real in any way.
With that, we welcome you through our portal and hope you enjoy the show.
What's up, hippies? Hope you're having a vibey day today. Yuki, I know you recently just got back from a pretty cool trip to Colombia. Is that right?
Yeah, man. I finally visited the promised land of Tusi and cocaine, the beautiful country of Colombia. And there was honestly way more to the trip than drugs. And I did not go there for drug-related purposes. But of course, you guys know me. Anywhere I go, I will do something drug-related. But before we dive into that, I wanted to share a story that really stuck with me. And I alluded to this in our last episode. And this has to do with kind of responsible versus irresponsible drug use. And this really helped put into context the level of kind of my drug use and your drug use and how I feel pretty good about us approaching it in a responsible way. So I was recently talking with a really close friend of mine. And we were talking about her days when she was in college, and she went to college in LA, like a big name brand school that, pretty much anyone would have heard of. And for the record, this is someone who's super, super experienced with drugs. She's a little bit older than us, and she's been doing drugs for like a long time. Like she's more experienced with drugs than we are, I would dare say. And I knew that she was like just going on benders and doing all the drugs when she was in college, but I didn't fully grasp the extent of that and how that was kind of becoming a problem. And so I talked to her recently. And so she was telling me how for 2 years of her college experience, she was living in this basically 12-person party house. And there were 2 other houses next door that were also 10 to 12-person houses of just all people who did shit ton of drugs. Like whether it was smoking weed, whether it was taking psychedelics, Molly, snorting coke, ketamine, whatever, you name it. There are people doing it. And I knew she was experienced, but I didn't realize like how much of a problem it was for her living there. Because the way she tells it was when she was in college, like within those 3 houses, there was always at least one person doing like a shit ton of drugs. Like at any given day or time, there was just people on a bender. And so as a result, like she was hanging out with those people all the time, and they were pretty much doing drugs every single day, dude. Like every day. They were doing stuff. She told me stories where literally her friends, like it would be final exam week and her friend would go into a final, like coming down off of an acid trip.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And the story is about like one of their friends who live in the house. They hadn't seen him for 3 days. And they're like, yo, where the fuck is, I don't know, Jerry? And finally Jerry appears and like, dude, where have you been? And he was like, dude, I took so much acid. I just spent 3 days in my room just jerking off the entire time.
What? Why is that what he does?
Dude, I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was hilarious when she told me. There's another time that a guy got so fucked up. I don't know if he was drunk. I don't know what happened to him, but he got super fucked up and he disappeared. And they're like, yo, where is this guy? And this wasn't Jerry. This was some other guy. And they literally found him like 8 hours later. He had passed out behind the couch in the living room.
He was just in the living room.
Yeah, but like behind the couch, and they didn't like think to check behind the couch, and I guess it was like God. Mostly up against the wall. And he was just like nestled in there, just like crazy shit like that. But just the quantity to which they were doing drugs, and because like she was around so many drugs, she saw a lot of people go down dark paths with that. Like she saw people go to rehab like during college or after college.
Oh.
Actually, at least one of the people that she knew pretty well, she lived with, had died after college from overdoses.
Jeez. Wow.
Um,
Jeez. That's
Crazy shit like that.
sad,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah. And my friend, like, luckily she had a pretty good head on her shoulders. And so coming out of college in LA, she told herself that she wanted to get as far away as possible from that scene. And so as a result, she got a really intense job, like overseas. She moved around the world and she went for 3 years without doing a single drug, because this was
Wow.
a super demanding job. They drug
Kudos
tested
to her.
randomly, and she basically gave herself a 3-year like detox rehab experience off of that because she saw the path that these people were going down. But it really put into perspective, like, I think our approach to drugs, like even in college when we were new to it, and I think even now as we've gotten into, pretty deep into our adult lives and become, I would say even more responsible drug users, like even just like keeping it to the weekends, like even doing it, on a Friday and or a Saturday night, like relatively speaking, the grand scheme of things, that is not bad at all. And, it's a good reminder to like be vigilant and never get overconfident that like, oh, I'm responsible, that's good, end of story. Like, no, it is a constant just reminder to just check yourself always, like never take that for granted. But man, like the more stories I hear about people really going over the edge with this stuff, it's like they take it way too far. And it's a good example of like what not to do. And I'm grateful for hearing experiences like this, because even though they sound freaking harrowing and terrifying, it's a really good communication of just what not to do. So yeah, man, pretty intense, but
Damn, that's wild, man. Yeah, dude, it's all about the healthy boundaries, which I feel like we do a good job preaching on this channel. We've got plenty of episodes talking about like the 10 commandments of drug use and all kinds of other things if y'all want to check that out. But damn, I'm glad that she like has a good head on her shoulders and went overseas and everything. Like that was smart.
dude, no, same. Honestly, I am like really proud of you as a person. Like that takes some grit and some vigilance. And she didn't find out until years later, actually, that like one of their friends from college, one of their housemates, like the guy had died, and they said he was found dead, having overdosed on something in a homeless shelter. And that this same
Jeez.
guy, in the years after college, on occasion, he would randomly message my friend on Facebook, basically just asking her for money, probably so he could buy more drugs, which is just gnarly, man. But yeah, that's
Wow.
some dark shit. And yeah, there's definitely drugs that, as you guys probably know, we absolutely do not advocate for on this channel. Those are the drugs that you don't want to get into, because those will likely lead you down that much darker path.
Yeah. Don't fuck with the fentanyls of the world. And I mean, honestly, not even some like other opioids that are just like not as scary. Don't even fuck with those, dude. Like,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I put air quotes around scary for those who are listening.
All right, man. Well, let's hop into the Colombia goodies. So I got to go for about a week to Colombia earlier this summer. Spent about half that time in Bogota visiting a buddy of mine. So Bogota is the capital of Colombia. It's actually at a very high elevation. Like it is way up there. And then the second half of the week and for the weekend, we went to Medellin, which is, probably the most legendary and well-known city in Colombia. That's kind of where, Pablo Escobar was based and got his start. And it was interesting just learning kind of about the different parts of that city and the history that they're still trying to contend with, where, yeah, like whether they want to admit it or not, like Pablo Escobar and the drug trade had a massive impact on that country. Yeah, no, so the reason I went was because a really good buddy of ours, he's working in Bogota for the summer. And he was like, yo, like come visit anytime this summer. Like you have a place to stay. We'll make a trip out of it. I was like, all right, say less. Found some cheap flights. Went to Bogota for a couple days. And honestly, Bogota itself was like fine as a city. I wouldn't super highly recommend it, but there were a couple cool things. One is there's this really cool hike you can do out of like the more center of the city up this like mountain ridge on the side of the city. And so you get a lot of elevation gain really quickly at just a couple miles. You get to the top, there's this really cool church and an amazing view of the city. And so we did that one morning before work. And that was honestly like a wonderful morning, got a great view, got a good, and then the other cool thing was that I just so happened to be in Colombia during the Copa America semifinals and finals, which Colombia was playing in. And I'm not a big sports guy. Like I pretty much follow no major sports, but I love like going to live sports, and I love like the energy and the passion that people have for their sports. Like I think that's one of the coolest things in the world. You know, thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people just like rooting for something, as it's really just magical and incredible to me. And so we were in Bogota for the semifinal where Colombia played Uruguay. And we literally went to one of the biggest parks in Bogota where they had these giant like projector screens set up. And there were probably between 5,000 and 10,000 people in this park watching this game.
That's so sick.
Dude,
like,
it was such a good time.
That's
like,
such a vibe, dude. I've seen like videos like that in like South America of like people all watching shit together. I've always wanted to be there.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. Like the energy was electric. We met up with a lot of my buddies, like some of his local friends who he'd made while he was there. And it would also happen to be a really good game. Like it came down to the wire. It was tied. And then I think Colombia scored like the game winning goal in like final stoppage time.
That must have been so hype.
It was actually a good game. Like there was a lot of suspense. And again, as someone who barely knows shit about soccer, isn't too enthralled with it. Like I was having a good time, So that was super special. Oh, yeah. And then a day or two after that, we flew to Medellin, which is like a super short flight. And Medellin was this city that I've heard so much about from so many friends, whether it's like for the party scene, whether it's just for like being really fun to explore and geography, whether it's just like a great place for digital nomads, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's been very hyped up to me. And so we get there and we stay at the super vibey hostel. This hostel has like co-working space, has hot tubs, has a bar, has these lounges. And it's in this really vibey neighborhood called El Poblado, which is like, I would say like pretty touristy and really geared towards like expats. But it was nice because within like a 20-minute walk, we could reach this area that was completely closed off to cars. And the entire area is just like restaurants, bars, and clubs. And so you walk around this area and there's like so much good food. There's so much activity happening. And Medellin is definitely a city that's, you know, kind of like about nightlife and partying. And
nice.
One of the first things I noticed when walking around that area was, dude, there are just escorts all over the place. I
knew you were going to say that. Oh my God. I knew you were going to fucking say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, that's just not my thing.
It's so concerning, dude. It's like, it's just like, how much of this is consensual? You know what I mean? Like,
no, dude. Yeah, it's
different topic.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there are some very dark corners to that world, and it's like, yeah, there's just like women walking around, and I'd even have friends who would tell me that like there's escorts like outside the clubs, like in the streets. And then literally when you go inside the club, there are also like escorts that are like allowed to be there by the club. And you can just like pay them a little bit just to like hang out with you, like at your table and just like sit on your lap and stuff and whatever.
Damn.
And
like the scene girls or?
Yeah, I guess not something I'm like particularly interested in, but it was interesting to hear. And then otherwise,
just concerning to me. That's all. Just like, I don't know. I have concerns.
No, dude, I mean, yeah, I completely agree. And that was something I did not participate in, both because I didn't want to personally, and also because that's not something I really want to support, especially down there. I would say a big focus of our trip was honestly eating food. Like I ate a shit ton of good food. There's some great restaurants around there, both more like low-key hole-in-the-wall places and then some really nice bougie food places that they're expensive by Colombian standards for sure, but you know, with American dollars, definitely a lot more manageable. And then, of course, we had to get a night of partying in and get some drugs.
Nice.
And so,
let's hear it.
yeah. And so my journey to get drugs in this place were, I got referred to a few local dealers through friends of mine who had been to Colombia in the past. And so one of my buddies sent me this dealer that looked solid. He sent me a super comprehensive menu. Like this guy had anything you could possibly imagine. I think he also had different like blends of like pressed pills, things that actually I didn't recognize the names of. Honestly, I'd have to like pull up the menu to check it, but tons of different strains of weed, pretty much anything you could possibly imagine. And dude, it was cheap, man. Like
really?
Shit was
damn,
really
I'm
cheap.
Sure you're like already at the source, you know, for
exactly. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, what I want to buy? I was like, all right, the two things that I know Colombia for are cocaine and Tusi. And so I messaged this guy, and unfortunately they were sold out of Tusi, which I was super, super bummed about.
Bummer.
Yeah, that was lame. But I was like, let me buy some coke. Even though like I literally don't do coke anymore. Like that drug just has no appeal to me. I was like, let me just buy a gram. Like I'm in
When in
Colombia.
Rome, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When in Rome. And so, funny enough, on the menu, they actually had two different options for Coke. They had regular Coke, and then they had washed Coke, and the washed Coke was a little bit more expensive. And I assume that was just like an acetone wash or something to take out any impurities from the Coke. And so I got that gram of Coke for, it was either like $30 or $35
US
for the
dollars?
gram. And that was just for 1 gram. Like, you know, if I bought more, it would have been even cheaper. But I was like, I only want 1 gram. And honestly, it was barely to do myself. It was more to like give out and share with friends. And then the other thing I bought was, it was branded as a Nexus, which I looked up, and Nexus is apparently another name for Tusi, real Tusi, not the kitchen sink Tusi that we talk about for the most part. And I was like, all right, let me try a gram of that. And so I put in my order, and these guys like pull up in front of the hostel in a car. I get in the car, and apparently I was supposed to pay in like Colombian pesos, but I didn't have any on me. I only had US dollars. So they kind of charged me a little bit extra, but I was also like, okay, like whatever. It's still like way cheaper than drugs I would get in the States. And they give them to me in this little like brown paper baggie that's stapled shut. It looks super nice. Like, here you go. I get out of the car, I go up to my bedroom, I open it, and dude, instead of the drugs being in like tiny mini Ziploc baggies, they're in these little like plastic vials that were like these little round things and like about this tall with different colored caps. And they're actually sealed shut. So there's like this thick layer of plastic around each one. It actually had one of those like perforated tear strips where you had to tear off the plastic to open up your little like container of drugs.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and they were super nicely labeled and branded with like the dealer's brand. You know, like this one was Nexus, this one was cocaine. So that was really cool to see. Actually, I kept those little jars with me because they're just cool to have.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so those are the two drugs I bought before our night of going out. And so this night of going out was, it was an adventure to say the least. So apparently there's this like tradition in Colombia where for like people's birthdays, especially like I don't know, teenagers, young adults, they basically hire out these like party buses, but they're not like the party buses that, you know, I have been in the city where we went to college. They're basically like, they're fully enclosed, but the sides are open air. They kind of just have like metal bars, almost like a cage, but it's like the whole length of the bus. And inside the bus, you know, there's chairs, there's like stripper poles, whatever. But like, because there's these like open windows to the side, you're just very like connected to like the outside world, and, you know, you're blasting music, etc. And so this party bus was something that like was organized by the hostel, and so they got a big group of us to go, and it made stops at like 3 different clubs around the city. Also, one of the selling points of the party bus was it was unlimited shots all night.
What the fuck?
Which is just heinous.
It just came with it?
Yeah. And so as we're boarding the bus, the people who basically were like running the show, they had one of those bottles that to me looks like a fertilizer bottle, where it's like this big plastic thing, and you have to pump a pump on the top to like pressurize it, and then you pull a trigger and it sprays. And so they had some concoction of, I don't know, liquor, like whatever, some alcoholic drink in there. And like for everyone getting on the bus, they were like just spraying this alcohol in their mouths and throughout the bus. And y'all know me, y'all know I don't drink at all. But these people kept trying to be like, hey, you want something to drink? You want something to drink? And every time I'd be like, nah. Which was like fine, but also like kind of annoying, because it's like after the 10th time I told you I don't want to drink, like, you know, you could probably take the hint that I don't want to drink for the whole rest of the night. And then the other thing was actually, I feel like I had to be very careful with doing my drugs there, because I know just from like looking around the hostel, there are a lot of signs about like not doing drugs.
Oh,
and
really?
like clearly they know that's like part of the appeal of coming to Colombia, and especially to Medellin. And so I think they try to foresee that and just like not deal with that at all. And so I did most of my drugs before getting on the bus, but I couldn't find an opportunity to re-up, because even at the clubs we went to, like the first club we went to, it was like pretty cool, but it was also like kind of empty. It was meh, but there's just a lot of like bouncer type figures and bodyguard looking dudes like all over the place. And it's like, if I went to the bathroom, like they would just like stand outside the bathroom.
Right.
And if there's one thing I learned from going out in Mexico, is that like, even though doing drugs is widely accepted there, you need to be really, really careful about that, because that could get you in some deep shit with like people who are trying to sell you the drugs in the club. If you don't buy their drugs, then you might get threatened
Right.
or actually like fucked with. So I was really nervous about that, and I wasn't able to do any more drugs like at all, which was kind of lame. And then we went to the second club. The second club was so not a vibe that my two friends I was with were like, yeah, no, this is not it. So we just called an Uber home like halfway through this party bus thing. And honestly, by that point, it was already like, I don't know, 3 a.m.
Oh,
So
wow.
my buddy and I went back to the hostel. We went in the co-working room. There was no one there. And we just spent a couple hours just doing Tusi and talking, which is my favorite thing to do in the world. And actually, I was honored as well because this mutual friend of ours, I was the first person to ever give him like a snort drug. Like he had never snorted a drug before.
Nice. Did you bring Tusi with you? Or?
I did. I brought some Tusi with me.
I knew it.
I can never leave home without that. And honestly, on an upcoming episode, I do kind of want to reveal like how I actually travel with drugs in a way that feels very like safe and good. So I will tell all in that episode, but safe to say that even when I'm traveling internationally, like I have my ways where I can bring like a couple grams of Tusi, like in a super well concealed, risk free or low risk way, technically supposed to get caught, but like I've never had any qualms about that. So it was good to have my Tusi. And then actually I did a tiny bit of the coke just to like, I gummed a little bit to see how numb it would make my mouth because that's supposed to be a good indicator of quality. And it seemed pretty good based on that. And then I didn't do any for the rest of the trip. But I did some of the Nexus, or what was supposed to be 2CB. And I didn't have my test kit with me. So, I was definitely, a little bit throwing caution to the wind, which I would not recommend. But man, the 2CB like hit me like a truck. And
nice.
because of how hard it hit me and because like 2CB, like the real shit is very, very potent. Like you don't need a lot to feel. I do think it was actual 2CB because that shit hit me hard. Like I did a small bump and dude, I was tripping out pretty hard.
That's so sick. Fuck,
it was a great time. It was a great time. It was a fucking great
I've never snorted 2CB, bro. I've only like taken it in a pill. I gotta try snorting it. That just sounds like a move.
Dude, it was so much fun. Well, that was definitely the highlight of the night. And then honestly, just chatting with my buddy and doing just, my regular kitchen sink 2C concoction. Yeah, but honestly, that was the extent of the drug experience. I think the other thing that was interesting were we went on a few like walking tours of Medellin while we were there. Like we went on, I think, 2 different ones. It's one of those free tours where you walk around the city and the tour guide just like takes you to these different destinations and tells you about history, whatever. And one of these tours was specifically focused on kind of talking about like the violence in Colombia's past and things with like military and the cartels and whatnot. And it was really interesting to hear because like this country has gone through a lot of shit. Like, I mean, yeah, through like everyone, all these tour guys brought up like the TV show Narcos and they're like,
damn,
yeah, like that shit happened. But also, a lot of that is like dramatized and that doesn't give credit to like, what things actually happened. There's a period of time where like the US was interfering with the government and they're trying to like uphold these like banana republics, which were literally these banana plantations they were like basically enslaving like local Colombians to work on these plantations. Like not straight up slavery, but the way the economics of it worked were that like the people who ran the plantations, they started paying the workers instead of in real money. And these like vouchers that these people could use to like buy their meals and their clothes and stuff at the stores that were all run by the plantation as well. And over time, the plantation would raise prices to the point where these like families couldn't even afford to feed themselves. And so in order to feed themselves, they had to sell their own land and their houses back to the plantation, which plantation just used to grow the footprint of the plantation. And so it was this like really fucked up system of basically like indentured servitude.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Damn.
Yeah. So like, super fucked up stuff on that side. And then like these banana plantations hired like these paramilitary groups that were basically just paid mercenaries to like do these like heinous violent acts, like literally like slaughter towns of people who would like try to get in their way. So that was fucked up. And then in Medellin, like during the peak of Escobar's time when the cartels were pretty much running the city, like this was a time when like literally like families were just scared to leave their houses for a period of, I think it was like a couple of years essentially. Like there were literally just bombs going off and shootings happening like every single day. And they literally showed us this map of like different sites around the city where there are these like massacres and stuff. And like, dude, really dark, fucked up stuff. Like that is an absolutely terrible legacy. But that context made me like all the more just impressed to see like how far it seems like the country of Colombia has come. Like we're now like Medellin feels like a significantly safer city. And even like our tour guide on that one tour, like when he was a really little kid, like that was the time where, you know, there's really violent era in Medellin's history. Like his parents would not let him go outside to play or like for anything. But now like things have changed so much for the better that you know, it's improved significantly. And obviously there's still a lot of issues, but it's very much like on the come up, which is wonderful to see.
Hell yeah. Damn, dude. That's a cool trip.
Yeah, it was sick. And actually the last thing I want to share, and the last thing we did while we were there, like right before flying out, was we visited this really cool neighborhood called Comuna 13. And so basically the city of Medellin, it's a massive city, you know, I think millions, if not tens of millions of people. Maybe not millions. It's divided in these like different neighborhoods called comunas. And this Comuna 13, like, it's very much kind of a symbol of like the advancement of like Medellin as a city. And so this place is known for being very much kind of like an arts district. And so you go in and it's basically one of these big like favelas. Like, you know, you see pictures, you think of a favela, basically like a slum built on these like steep hills with like layers of houses literally built on top of each other. And like, that's exactly what Comuna 13 is. And most favelas in the world are like slums. It's like people living in poverty with next to nothing. But this one in particular, like the government of Medellin had put in some development and some money into it, I think like 20 years ago. And it really became the center for like growth, development, and arts. And so it's known for having these beautiful, just like high quality graffiti paintings on art pieces around the entire neighborhood. And so we went on this like couple hour tour, just like seeing all of these different like graffiti art pieces and learning about the history of the area. And dude, it was just such a like cool, colorful, wonderful place. And we took this tour during sunset. And so as it got dark, like we got to see the sunset over this. And we just so happened to be on this tour right before the final of the Copa America started, with Colombia playing in it. So you see everyone like wearing their Colombia jerseys and the energy was palpable. You know, we're at the top of like the favela. Basically, there's fireworks going off all around us, like people putting off fireworks. And it was just so fucking cool, man. Like that was such a special experience and a special time to be there. And I was really glad that I got, you know, so much more out of that trip than just like the drugs. Like the drugs were a small part of it.
Dude, hell yeah. But I'm so glad you got to do that. That's so sick.
Yeah, thank you, man. No, it was a really good cultural experience, and I definitely recommend it for people to visit. Medellin, especially, it was cool to see. And then the last thing I'll mention was I did actually bring back the leftover cocaine and Nexus that I had bought.
Oh my god!
Which I had most of it left. I brought it back. The Nexus I haven't done any more of. Honestly, just gonna save that for a special time. So if you want to try some, maybe that'll work out.
Nice.
And then the cocaine, I brought it back, and like I said, I don't do coke. I brought it back. I think I did maybe a small bump. But these like last few weekends that I've been home, I've just been giving it out to friends at parties. Like I'll go around parties, and like I'm lucky to be at a point in my life where I can give out drugs to friends, and even people I don't know. Dude, giving drugs to people is such an easy way to make friends. Like especially when you give them drugs and you don't do them yourself. They're like, damn, this guy's really nice. And so I was giving out coke to some like people I just met, and they're like, dude, you're awesome. Like, let's hang out. I'm like, yeah, dude, hell yeah. And so that was cool. And so I gave all my coke.
That's such a flex. Like, oh, you want some coke straight from Colombia?
No, dude, straight up. Honestly, it was such a flex. They were super impressed. I was like, yes, sir. Like, just straight from the source, baby.
That's sick. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I've said hell yeah a lot. Sorry. It's just like how I feel right now, you know?
No, I think that's a fair reaction to what hopefully is a pretty positive and uplifting and inspiring story. Place to visit that's gone through some shit and is on the come up, and also ways to make friends with people using drugs.
Be a little careful with that one, but yes.
yes, absolutely. I've only been giving out, like, luckily this has been at events where it's very clearly a drug-centered event where everybody's on drugs. Yeah. Like, what do you like, we're trading things like, like lately I've been out of ketamine, so I've been giving out some Tusi. And I'll go up to friends, usually people I know, and be like, hey, like, do you want anything? Like, I got Tusi, I got Coke, I got whatever. I just like, dude, drugs are 10 times better.
Dude, it's a social thing. Like, if it's not, like, as soon as it becomes not a social thing, like, that's kind of a problem. Like,
yeah, I would.
With the exception of like some psychedelics, in my opinion, but
I would definitely tread lightly there.
But even psychedelics are better with people, I think. But
agreed. Well, cool, man. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. If any of y'all have been to Colombia before and have maybe had more epic partying or drug related experiences, like I know there's a lot more to be had. I really just touched the surface on that front. I would love to hear them from you guys in the comments below.
With that, that's today's pod.
You've been listening to Modern Day Hippie. As you exit the portal, we have just one small ask of you. If you learned something new today, had a laugh, or resurfaced a drug story of your own, we want to hear about it. Drop us a comment on YouTube and show us some love on your favorite podcasting platforms. Internet algorithms really dog on us because of the topics that we discuss, so your support goes even further here than you might think. We'll catch you next week.